Good morning, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. In this episode, we're going to tackle the removal and replacement of U-joints on the drive shaft of my brother's 1993 Ford F250 named Ty. Without further ado, let's get started. So here's the drive shaft, and how this got started is we're trying to put the transmission back on the engine and needed the ability to pull the transmission back so we could get the engine seated, and that meant the drive shaft had to come out, which meant figuring out how to take the drive shaft out. And on his truck, what you got to do is there's a pair of U-bolts that hold the U-joint in place. You got to take all that out and then knock it loose. And it had to do that. I had to push it forward to knock all that loose, and then was able to drop the drive shaft. But what all that meant is we took a closer look, or I took a closer look at the U-joints and went, yeah, these are toast. So here we are replacing U-joints. And first step we need to do is with U-joints, you got to pound them out because of how they go in. I guess I should also say what a U-joint does is it lets you do this. It allows for the drive shaft to have some play and wiggle as you're driving down the road. So that way you don't wind up bending and then destroying things. And they do wear out because I'm not going to take a new one apart. I'll show you on an old one once I get one out, but basically, there's a cap, and that's what you see that's pounded in here at the ends with this retainer. There's a cap, and then inside of that cap is a whole bunch of needle bearings which allow the U-joint to roll and pivot. And they'll keep for a really long time if you keep grease in them. And these haven't. They do have a zerk for greasing. Or at least the back one does. Let's see. Looks like this top one doesn't. Then I can see. Yeah. Okay, this one looks a little special, so that's interesting. Have to dig into that. But the bottom one has a zerk to grease with, and it just wasn't done. It was neglected, so I'm going to start with just probably this one because I know we have the right U-joint for it. I'm going to put it in the vise, get the retainers out, which is this little dude right here. Get some pliers, get the retainer out, and then pound it out. So this is what we look like when the retainer is out. What I like to do is just use some locking pliers, needle nose locking pliers, get in there, get a good grip, yank it out. Sometimes they get stuck and you'll need to come in with like a flathead screwdriver and a hammer and just kind of tap it around until you unstick it, because it sits in a groove that's along the inside of this cap. So one more to come out, and then we should be able to pound this through and then get it out. Alright, hard to see because we don't have enough light yet this morning, but those little silvery nibs you see around the edge, there you go. You can kind of see it there in the corner. Those are needle bearings, and they go all the way around, and then they sit on a post so that this cap can rotate around the post. That's how this works. So this one was okay. It still had some grease in it. All the needle bearings were there. But one of the grease seals had failed on this U-joint, and that part was bad, so the whole U-joint was bad, so got to be replaced. Now to get this out, what I did is I got a socket that was about the size of the cap I was working on. And I got my trusty new 3-pound hammer, and I just started pounding on it. And you have to pound it enough that it slides all the way down to the point where you can take this cap off, and then you can pull the U-joint out. Okay, next step in the process after you pound out your U-joint is you need to clean the bores that the caps are in, because if But these U-joints are old, which normally it's going to be. They're going to be filled with rust and cruft and crap. So what I like to do is a little bit of PB. Take a towel. And then you just run it through. Anyway, try to get a better camera. There we go. Run it through. Rotate it inside the bore. Clean it out. And what you may want to do also is take a jeweler's screwdriver and then actually work on the groove where the retention ring goes, which I know is kind of hard to see. Yeah, you can see it now, bottom of the screen. Clean out this groove. So that way your retention clip, which, yeah, I don't have one sitting up here, but it's a little copper spring clip that goes right here to keep the cap from sliding out. You want to make sure that groove is clear so it'll sit firmly and do its job. So we're going to do this, and then the next step is going to be, all right, my brother help me out here. Here you go. That's what a new one looks like. Next step after this is we go to reinsert. I'm going to do a little bit of touch-up work for some mistakes that I made getting these U-joints out. Basically, when you lock stuff in a vise, make sure, like this right here, that's not a problem. That's just some surface scratching on the drive shaft. It'll rust over, life will continue. That's not a problem. But this right here, this was an accident, but I did groove this, and the reason why it's machined smooth, and I didn't do this over here, it's 30 years old, is so that when it is spinning, it doesn't rip through the seal at the tail of the transmission and then start peeing fluid everywhere. So we're going to need to smooth this out with some sandpaper so it doesn't catch on anything, and otherwise it'll be fine, because the actual splining, which is needed to lock onto the transmission's output, is on the inside, as you can see. So we're going to get that done, and then I'll bring you back for the insertion of new U-joint. Okay, so the U-joints we're using today, you need to pay attention because the part houses are wrong. If you have a 93 F250 that is a non-SuperDuty and has a single one-piece drive shaft, the U-joint that goes in the slip yoke, which engages the back of the transmission, is going to be a 5-213X. If you go to the part house is going to tell you that you need a 51204X, which that does work for the U-joint that goes at the rear differential, but it does not work up front. The caps are too big. So that is that. Figured that one out somewhat of the hard way. I had to do a bit of research. I had to go to Spicer's website and do a filter to actually get the appropriate front U-joint. Alright guys, we went and did a little research and we found there's two ways to do this. One way involves using a vise. My vise isn't big enough to do it. The other way involves using a press, which I do have. You can pick them up, I don't know, $50, $100 depending on the quality you get. And let's go ahead and show you how to do it. So what you got to do is, firstly, you take your needle bearing cap off. You need to be really careful when you do it. And then you're going to take this, make sure it's clean, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to slide it back on. I didn't like that. Now, we've already gotten one side in to kind of prove out this method to make sure that we could do it and it was reproducible and I could show it to you. Okay, so you get it slid in, but you have to be really careful you don't tear your seal or you don't smash the needle bearing. And PB may help. Once you do that, you're going to take your press, and the actual pressing end is going to go against your cap. And then your other end gets snugged up. I'll bring you in. The other end is going to get snugged up against the other side of your drive shaft. Now this is a steel drive shaft, so we can punish it a little more. If you have an aluminum drive shaft, be more careful. So once you get it in position, in my case it's a 22 millimeter, to start pushing it in. But you got to be careful that you center. You have to come in square, just like with my, get you a better view here, guys. There we go.
I'm a little bit off center, but that's okay because I got centered when I seated it, and I'm taking it nice and slow.
Yeah, the bearing cap needs to go in square.
Now that I've got it in a little bit, I can loosen, reposition.
And once you have it going in square, then you can just start pushing. And you're only going to push until you get the retaining ring for your snap ring, until it's clear and the snap ring can actually go in. That's all you got to do. You don't need to push it any further.
Alright, what's going on here?
So just kind of have to baby it in. The vise method is better, but my vise won't fit it. So this is what we're doing. So you can see we got it moving now. So the cap is getting pressed in. We'll reposition, get it pressed. This is loads better than trying to do it by pounding it with a hammer. But you still got to go slow and be careful, otherwise you're going to tear your stuff up.
But you're getting close. You want to check your amount of play here. You see I can get a little bit of wiggle back and forth between my bearing cups here. So I'm not quite there yet. I'm just going to slowly keep going until I've got both these seals touching and I can see my groove for my snap ring in here.
Bear in mind, don't do that wiggle maneuver unless you're sure you've got your caps in, otherwise you're going to thrash your needle bearings. Another thing to note is if your application has a zerk for greasing, make sure that the zerk hole is pointing towards the drive shaft so that you will have access to it after everything is installed. Okay, when you are done and you've got enough of the groove visible that you can drop in your snap ring, use a pair of needle nose pliers, push it till it pops, and that's it. You are done. Repeat this process for all your other ends. Alright, so we got everything back together. And now we got the zerk in. That turned out to be an 8 millimeter. And it's right over there. You don't want to kill it. And now I'm going to pump some grease in it so that we don't have to worry about this U-joint anymore. And you can use any old grease gun. I have this somewhat fancy schmancy Harbor Freight battery powered automatic grease gun because I got tired of fighting with stuff because I have enough things I gotta grease. So you push it on until you hear it click, pull the trigger, and when you see grease start coming out the seal, you're good. Alright guys, there you go. So we went ahead, we got both ends done, got our zerk in. We're not going to grease this side until it's fully installed because otherwise these caps are going to try to pop off. So what we've done is taken some tape so that these needle bearing caps do not come off. And this is the end, it goes into the rear differential. So once that's all said and done and I get the U-bolts back in, we'll grease this. But that's it. That is a way to go ahead and get your front and rear U-joints good to go. And so I will call this a successful repair. Alrighty guys, that's gonna do it for the installation of new U-joints into Driveshaft of a 1993 Ford F250. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a comment. If you got something to say, I enjoy reading them and I respond to almost all of them. Please also like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that other fun YouTube stuff. And remember, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. I'll see you guys next episode.